We are joined today by Isobel McArthur, a legend, an Olivier-winning playwright and performer.
Director.
And we are so glad to have you on the podcast today, and also to be welcoming you to Australia very shortly.
Yes, thank you so much. I'm very excited.
Have you been to Australia before?
No, I've never been to Australia before. The only travel I've ever really got to do has been thanks to working in the theatre. So it'll be an entirely new experience for me.
Amazing.
Perfect.
You're very, is it Glasgow? Is that where you're from?
Yes, I'm a Mancunian Glaswegian. So I've spent pretty much half my life in Manchester and the other half in Glasgow, and that's where sort of the two sides of my family are from. But yes, this is probably a Glaswegian would be able to identify this as something of a West Coast Scottish accent.
Right, because I don't hear any Mancunian for someone who's spent
No,
half their time there.
if my mum rang right now, it would all snap right back.
David is also half Glaswegian as well.
Yeah.
Oh, God, I knew I liked you.
Yeah,
There you go.
So tell us a little bit about the birth of Pride and Prejudice, sort of, and what it's about.
Pride and Prejudice, sort of, is a play with songs that I wrote 8 years ago for a 2-week run in a 200-seater theatre in Glasgow. And to my astonishment, it's still playing. But in a nutshell, it's Pride and Prejudice told by the servants with karaoke.
Amazing.
Magnificent.
So it's a piece that I wrote in the initial for Glaswegian audiences and for a theatre called the Tron, who were interested in some kind of reimagined classic novel for their summer main stage slot that year. I know you're quite used to warm weather, but in Glasgow, if there's any, a literal miracle has occurred. So we were up against it that summer because it was a World Cup year and a heat wave. So in Glasgow, you'll know, we have what's called taps off in the event of that, which means everyone takes their tops off.
Wow.
And sits with their exposed white flesh in whatever sunshine they can get, drinking. Yep. And watch football outside pubs. So the idea that anybody would come down into this kind of basement theatre and watch Jane Austen was, absurd. But I knew that there were any number of perceptions that maybe got in the way for people with Jane Austen. I had never read the novel myself until I sat down to adapt it. And I was amongst those people who had perhaps an inverted snobbery. I thought, this is going to maybe be about the lives of people with whom I have nothing in common. It's maybe the preoccupations of the upper classes at a point in history that's already quite peculiar and alienating, and it may be literary in a way that's too dense and actually comes with quite a lot of exclusivity. And as such, I need to create a piece of theatre that is very, very generous and lets an audience know that this is for them and they are for it. And so that was the kind of impetus to start writing it and make it in the way that I did.
Why did you choose that then? If they said, like, take a classic piece of literature, why did you go then for something you thought, well, maybe this isn't for me?
I went to the secondhand bookshop that I lived above at the time and got some Smollett, some Dickens, some Austen, all these 50p paperbacks that are otherwise going in the recycling, and sat down to read some of those books that the titles have cast such a long shadow and they've got so much cultural baggage, but which I knew at that point I still hadn't read. And really the reason for choosing Pride and Prejudice was how surprised I was on opening page 1 at how wrong I was about the novel. It was a riot from the opening paragraph. And I thought, I recognise these characters. They're funny, they're flawed. The whole world it's a real farce. It's a proper rom-com. And I think you can sometimes come across historians or literary critics who are keen to tell you why something is relevant or accessible, and they're wrong. But actually, the truth about Jane Austen and Pride and Prejudice in particular for me was I thought actually a lot of the adaptations we've done over the years are too po-faced. They have erased a lot of the humour of the original novel. I think that there's something about looking backwards, about period, and maybe in particular about Regency, but romance as well, that makes us behave with a reverence that makes us think that certain forms of humour are not appropriate. And so these become erased, and the whole thing takes itself very, very seriously. Whereas everything I read in that novel was actually really playful, really goofy, and about what a mess the whole situation was, not how mannered and prim and proper it was. So I just wanted to bring all that to the fore for an audience and let them make the discoveries that I had been lucky enough to make in picking up and reading that book.
That's wonderful. It's interesting you said that about the humor is sometimes lost in some of the adaptations. I've been thinking a lot recently about The Muppets Christmas Carol.
Excellent. 1992. It's a classic. Yeah.
And one of the reasons that I think it's so successful is the fact that you've got Gonzo as Charles Dickens, who's got so many of the lines, and it's so truthful and so faithful to the book because he's there giving all of these Dickensian lines that are so spectacular. And so much of in the adaptations, we lose Austen's voice. And that's where a lot of the witticism comes from. So I'm so excited to see Pride and Prejudice sort of to have not only the story, but we get a narrative eye as well through the servants. So what is, when you are playing, because you are one of the servants and also some of the roles, what is that sort of device? How does that work as the servants and telling the story?
Yeah, thanks for mentioning that, because it's useful to talk about the multi-rolling. There are 5 in the cast for Pride and Prejudice, sort of, and they're played by female identifying actors, and that is one of the stipulations of putting the play on. There's a few reasons for this. First of all, Pride and Prejudice is a woman's story. It's about the plight of 5 daughters and the fact that they may end up destitute by the fact that at this point in history, English women cannot ultimately hold on to property within their own families without marrying. So they all need to find husbands. Additionally, Jane Austen couldn't publish under her own name during her lifetime by dint of her gender. And another thing that's very rarely touched on in adaptations is the fact that Pride and Prejudice is set during the Napoleonic Wars. Yeah. So the vast majority of household servants at that point in history in that part of the world are female, because you're fined, in fact, if you employ male servants, because they would otherwise be much more usefully used in fighting that war. So the women who actually facilitate the making of art at this point in history, the writing of romantic novels or paintings, portraiture, poetry, you name it, they're the ones sweeping the ash from the grate and emptying the chamber pots. They are the women who are working class women. So I wanted to celebrate them. So to have them as the narrators of the story is this kind of triumphant act of transgression, whereby they can then play every role, including the men, including the highest status characters, including the richest characters. And it's another layer of pastiche, therefore, in terms of how those characters are portrayed. And the reason that's relevant for narration and the voice of Austen is that she doesn't give the servants names and lives per se, but she lets us know which characters to get on board with and which we should take an immediate disliking to based on how they treat the servants. And that's when she sort of swings the camera around, really, Austen, in her narration. And you see it through all her novels. So that's something I was extremely keen to do. I'm always on a class crusade. That's a big part of why I make theatre and why I want to make it. So that's important too. But yes, I would say that what's nice about dialogue writing in plays is that you can borrow from narration. And sometimes you can even borrow one character's dialogue and give it to another, so long as you're serving the story, it doesn't seem too out of place, and that you continue to give the audience that flavour of the Regency era, the language, the poetry of Austen. Sometimes an entire sentence stands alone and it just does not need changed. It's just perfectly rendered and everybody can understand it because it's such good writing, regardless of how old it is.
Go ahead.
You also have contemporary music.
Yes.
Woven into the...
What's the karaoke?
Absolutely. How does that weave its way in? Because there are songs there that I've got an idea of how they fit in, and I really hope that they do. Lady in Red is one of the ones that I'm hoping that's something to do with Catherine de Bourgh.
Yeah, there you go. It's a short skip and a jump, isn't it? Yeah. Again, really, the use of music, it's fairly obvious in terms of the rationale. It's an act of generosity. Hopefully, it's a handout to the audience. All my favourite theatre has music in it, but really, when I was reading it, what struck me was that the characters are so preoccupied with where the next party's coming from, who's throwing the next ball. And that's because the lives of the middle-class women are so stultifying. They're not allowed to have jobs. They're not allowed to have really very many hobbies. All these things are considered unfeminine. So there's a lot of sitting there and doing needlepoint and waiting for something to happen. And, there's big periods of the book where Austen says, and for many days, nothing happened. And a peacock walked across the lawn and then nothing happened. And nobody had anything to say. And at one point, someone coughed and nothing happened. Then a letter arrived. And you're like, Jesus, a letter! Oh, my God! So, obviously, that may not be inherently theatrical. But these balls, the parties, that's where the matchmaking goes on. That's where you can find man. Therefore, would you like to go and sit and perform? Ladies being put on display, being asked to play instruments, being asked to sing becomes a big part of the shopping for partners culture. And so getting up and singing, in particular, when it came to a working class art form like karaoke, felt like a really perfect fit. The things I recognize when people perform karaoke is that we can make direct romantic declarations to people in the room, or sometimes it's pure catharsis after many drinks and you're just crying all your tears. Every now and again it's about something that's about peacocking and being really front-footed and arrogant and the most fantastic person. And I just think they're brilliant windows into what's going on with people dramatically, as well as an excuse to kind of foist all my favorite music on an audience on mass.
So are the songs rewritten in the style, or they just sing them karaoke?
Yeah, they're performed really as karaoke numbers, but in character.
Right.
So it's not necessarily like a musical where suddenly everybody's singing a number and who they really are may or may not matter. They're sung very much in character and by characters, and that's crucial to the story.
So are you bringing to the Australian production here, are you going to be casting Aussies, or are you going to bring your cast out that you know and you've handpicked for this?
No, it's an Australian cast, yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, and I think that's actually really important. This show's toured Britain many times and continues to do so, and I have been very proud of the many different British regional accents that we've had making up that cast. That gesture of not having an RP, a received pronunciation, plummy English voice to tell this story is a big, important part of why it's different for me. And I think some of this will also be true for Australian audiences. I think our notions of what voices signify what character traits are far too cut and dried, and they still actively hold a lot of us back in life, in a way that's really deeply unfair. And so I'd be keen, as I always am with different actors, to ask about the accents that are in their arsenal naturally and see which of these might be appropriate for different characters, so that we can have a different take on characters, you know, whether it's Mr. Darcy or Elizabeth Bennet, who we perhaps think we know what they should sound like, and reconsider that.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, reclaiming it. Fabulous. So the next step. So have you cast it already?
No, but it's in the process of being cast now.
Okay.
So yeah, if you're an actor, if you're funny, if you're a funny woman, get in touch.
We know quite a few.
Meet me in Oz, though. Yeah.
Perfect. So you are coming over to.
I'll be coming over really to see the play shortly before it's ready, and to watch the play and performance, which will be fantastic. But because I will be directing a British version of the show at the exact same time, my associate director will be leading the process in Australia.
So as you said, this started off in the Tron Theatre to 200 people. You thought it was going to be 2 weeks, and it's gathered this sort of life 8 years later of its own. Can you reflect on now, I guess, the gift that this has given you for your career? How has this 50p Austen novel changed your life?
Yeah, it's extraordinary. I mean, I trained as an actor and was aware that in order to make the working week work, you just have to have as many strings to your bow as possible. And if things aren't happening for you, try and create opportunities, knock on doors, offer people ideas. And every play I've ever made has been in order to just get through that particular month and try and bring some joy to an audience. And every one you make, you try to make the best thing you possibly can. And I don't know why certain things strike a chord more than others. Sometimes it's to do with when they happen, or what notes they strike, some of which you're aware of and some of which you aren't. But I am blessed to have received this story from an extraordinary woman, insufficiently celebrated while she was alive, and to be able to kind of commune with her spirit for so many years in the process of just celebrating her writing and sharing it with people, and the very real world impact for everybody involved. You know, we took an all Glaswegian team from Glasgow on tour to London's West End, and they continue to make that show to this day. And awards are what they are, and that depends how you look at it. But the real world impact of that is more work for those people, real wages that pay their real bills. And I don't know any artists that aren't struggling at the moment. So we've got Jane Austen to thank for all of that. And I feel extremely blessed. Now, of course, I speak to you the day after her 250th birthday, which was yesterday. So thanks, Jane. I'll raise my coffee since it's breakfast time for me, even though it's evening.
That's not very Glaswegian of you.
No, I know, you're right. It's gone 5 to 10. I should be raising a large whiskey. Yeah, it's. I feel extremely, extremely lucky, and I hope it continues to bring people happiness. That's the beautiful thing about the inexhaustible well of creativity, isn't it? You can't wear a story out; it just keeps on giving. Great.
Does it change when the actors are in the room, this production? So if you have cast 5 Aussie comedians who bring their own sense of self and, you know, tricks and bits and bobs that they have in their arsenal, will you be like, your resident would be like, hey, listen, we'll just tweak this here and there just so to make sure it's a bit more Aussie, or this person's brought this?
Absolutely. I think it's essential. I think it's a really wonderful, you know, the theatre making must be collaborative, and it must be joyful. And I think that you ensure the longevity of a production and the mental health and general well-being of a cast by letting everybody have a stake in the thing. You know, we've all got to feel like we're part of something bigger than ourselves. And I work as an actor for half of the year, and I've been part of processes. Stand there, do that, do not do that, don't draw attention to yourself, you know, when you're kind of effectively a piece of furniture, you know, you're set dressing for that director. And I never want to be part of those processes. I think they're soulless, and they're and they're parsimonious and unhelpful. So yes, no, one of the you know, the play's there, the play's ready, the play's got the full toolkit you need. If you come in one morning and you're fresh out of ideas or energy, it will take care of you. But if people have got contributions to make, ideas, collaboration's king. It's just the best. You know, there's a few kind of more general examples of that, but some of the more specific examples are, you know, it's also an actor muso show. The actors play instruments.
Wow.
So we can rearrange the score to accommodate different musical skills, which is really glorious. But yeah, the best thing from a character point of view, and we've all got Jane Austen to thank for this, is she writes recognizable characters. Like every single person in Pride and Prejudice is somebody you've met, you know, you've encountered in your local supermarket, you have to deal with in your family at Christmas, you name it. And we all have people we can draw on in order to really play those characters. And I love when an actor comes in and is playing Mr. Collins and is trying to crack it, and then eventually says, you know, he does remind me of my dad. And then when they play their dad, we've got it, you know. And yeah, that's joyful. That always is a wonderful thing, because every version then is really quite different, but they all work.
Oh, Isobel, thank you so much for your time. It's been so lovely to talk to you.
It's a pleasure.
We cannot wait to see this.
Yeah, we can't wait. It's going to be so fun.
Thank you. You're so lovely to talk to. Thanks for all your enthusiasm and support. And yeah, all the best with your podcast.
Cheers,
Thank
mate.
you ever so much.
Cheers. Okay.
Merry Christmas.
Thanks, Isobel.
Bye.
Bye.